Shannon, can you hear me?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Youth on the Move, Rethinking Migration and Opportunity in Africa webinar. My name is Susan Sindani. I will just ask you for a bit of patience as we wait for more people to join us. Then we will start right away. Thank you for your patience. So as we keep on joining, feel free to just I don't know if it's possible to use the chat box to just introduce yourselves and the organization you're representing, as well as the country or the city you're joining us from, as we wait for more people to join in so we can start. Thank you. Hi, Zainab. I hope you can hear me now. But if you're having any technical issues, I think you can just try to leave and then rejoin and see if it has been rectified. But I see Tariq introducing themselves, so I don't know if you can still hear an echo, Tariq. Welcome, Mavis from Ghana, Accra. Zainab is still saying there's no audio. I think maybe Zainab, the issue is on your end because Tariq says they can hear me. Try rejoining and see if the issue is still. Thank you, Tariq, for the feedback. I'm glad that the echo is not there anymore. Thank you, Abi. Zainab, try to join in and rejoin. Just keep trying. We hope you don't lose you entirely. Or try using an audio device or updating your Zoom app. Thank you for those who are introducing themselves. Just keep on introducing yourselves, your name, any organization you're representing, or any role, whether you're a student or you're a consultant. We would like to hear from you and know where you're joining us from. As we wait for a few more minutes before we can kick this off. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mavis. So as we wait for others to join in, just to let you know that we are streaming this webinar on the Afrobarometer YouTube channel, and the link has been copied and will be shared across the social media channels. So just keep on the lookout for their link, and you can as well go ahead and share the link to the live stream on your own channel so that we can have the whole of the world listening in and probably just contributing as well, because this is our regional convening. Thank you so much. Yes, Zainab, I'm still audible. So I think the issue is entirely on your end. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. I think we have enough quorum right now to start. My name is Susan Sindani. I'm joining in from Nairobi, and good afternoon and evening from where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Youth on the Move, Rethinking Migration and Opportunity in Africa webinar, which has been jointly organized by Neurotrust Network and Afrobarometer in commemoration, or as we say here in Kenya, marking International Youth Day 2026. And the theme for this year's Youth Day was different contexts and common aspirations. Again, my name is Susan Sindani, and I will be the moderator for this session. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a little bit of expectations for us in the next 84 minutes, now that we are 6 minutes in. So the first part will be opening with a data spotlight from Afrobarometer on how African youth themselves describe migration and opportunity. But before that, we'll hear from Neurotrust to just basically welcome us to the webinar. And then after that, we will bring in our final voices from our panelists representing the Horn of Africa to North Africa. From these conversations, we're going to see and test that data that will be presented against, what is basically happening when it comes to youth migration and movement on the ground in the different regions, as every panelist will represent their region. And then as we continue having the conversations, we'll be hearing directly from youth respondents and our audience. So feel free to use the question and answer section. We'll try our best possible to answer everyone's question. And please, we encourage you to keep these conversations live and engaging and interactive, because we'd love to hear what are your thoughts and insights. And then we will also close the conversation, hopefully by the 19th minute, with what we still do not know. And Afrobarometer will share with us 3 headline statistics for the record to carry with us as we go away from this webinar. So before I bring in Neurotrust, just a few housekeeping notes for our panelists. If you're not speaking, please remain muted. And for our lovely audience, as I mentioned, please use the Q&A function to submit any questions. We'll try our level best to answer all questions. And I mentioned that the session is being recorded on YouTube live stream if you want to check out Afrobarometer YouTube channel, but also it's going to be shared across their social media channels. So with that, allow me to hand over to Neurotrust Network to give their opening remarks. Thank you and welcome, Mary.
Hi, Susan, please confirm you can hear me
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
and you can see me, I hope.
Yes, I can see you. Hi.
Hi. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I have seen from the chat box, guys are logging in from all over the world, so this is quite exciting. So I just want to welcome everybody and just to wish that you guys have been having a really good day so far. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and it's so lovely to have all of you here with us today for this webinar, which is such an important conversation, and it's also something really personal to me. And I feel as though that this particular conversation we're having in commemoration of International Youth Day is not only responding to youth migration and in terms of how it shapes where young Africans live, but also just looking at the opportunities, the skills, the resources, and the future that we want to build for the continent. And it's also the reason that we've partnered with Afrobarometer to bring this conversation together. And at Neurotrust, just a small brief, a lot of our work is about young people. So just having a look at their scope in terms of their aspirations, their livelihoods, and ultimately their ability to shape the future of the communities and the countries that they come from. And at Afrobarometer, they also bring something equally important to this conversation. So looking at the voices, perspectives of Africans themselves, which is backed by data and evidence. And I'm so excited to listen to what Coffee is going to be presenting shortly. And today, it's not simply a conversation about just the migration aspect, the statistics or policies. It's about asking, what are young Africans telling us about futures that they want, and what do those aspirations mean for how we think about migration, opportunity, development across the continent? And those numbers are important, but behind those statistics is a young person who's really just trying to ask, what does my future look like? Where can I build a good life? And there is a very hopeful side to this conversation, but I think we also need to not romanticize migration. Young people want better jobs. They want to study. They want to build businesses. They want to give back to their communities and experience the world at the same time. So a lot of the times, when a young African says that they want to leave the continent and they want to go and explore a different country or different opportunities, we shouldn't necessarily look at that as a failure on our end in terms of why are they not staying? Why are they not building? And I know these are questions I've also asked young people over and over again. But how do we make sure that we can reframe this in a way that it's a choice to stay, a choice to move, a choice to come back, and the choice to contribute to Africa, even when you don't live on the continent. And a lot of the times, not every migration story is a story of opportunity. We've heard of so many stories and research being done and just young people sharing and contributing whereby their journey has been incredibly dangerous. And when safe and legal pathways become a limited option, people end up taking irregular routes. We know them. And along these routes, we've seen young people who've been exposed to violence, to conflict, exploitation, human trafficking, and other forms of harm. And what really strikes me about that is that a lot of these young people didn't start this journey looking for danger. It starts with a dream, looking for work, educate, better life. So I think for this conversation, we have to hold both sides, whereby we don't look at young people living as a rejection of the continent, but them simply saying they want a better future and they're willing to go where they think they can find it. And this is where today's conversation is really interesting, because the question isn't simply, are young people leaving? And we know that many are thinking about it. I've thought about it. I've left. I've come back. But the bigger question is, what would make staying a genuine choice? What would make moving a safe choice? And perhaps most importantly, what would make returning and contributing home a very attractive choice, which I'm really looking forward to listening to all the speakers and the contributions. And we have an amazing lineup of speakers. Looking forward to your thoughts, to your contributions. And on behalf of Neurotrust and Afrobarometer, I want to say Karibuni, which means welcome in Swahili. And I look forward to a very fruitful conversation. And Susan, I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, and Asante Sana, which means thank you so much in East Africa. Thank you for setting the tone for us and opening our minds to what we need to start thinking about. So before we invite our panelists, allow me to invite Coffee so that we can also be grounded in evidence and see, I have a picture of what are the youth perspectives when it comes to migration and movement across the continent. Thank you so much and welcome, Coffee.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. I have to say that Youth on the Move is quite an appropriate title because here in Ghana, there is a joke that if you meet a young Ghanaian and you ask him or her, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The answer might be definitely not in this country. Behind this humor is a serious issue which is many Africans are thinking about migration. But rather than simply asking, why do young Africans want to leave? I think there is a deeper question, which is, what are young Africans looking for? What opportunities do they feel are missing? And what would make staying home an attractive choice? That is what we are going to explore today. But before we go into the findings, I want to talk briefly about where the data comes from, which is Afrobarometer. So Afrobarometer is a pan-African non-partisan survey research network that provides reliable data on African experiences and evaluation of democracy, governance, and quality of life. At the heart of what we do is a simple idea that African voices should be part of the decisions that affect Africa. We have been doing this since 1999. We have so far completed about 10 survey rounds in as many as 45 countries. Round 11 surveys are currently underway and it's expected to be finalized in 2027. So when you look at the map that we have here, this map represents the countries that we have surveyed. The gray areas are countries that we have not been able to survey yet. And we hope that Subsequent surveys will explore these countries. Our surveys are nationally representative of adult citizens aged 18 and above. Interviews are mainly conducted face-to-face. We started exploring telephone surveys in our previous round, which was round 9. And interviews are conducted in the language of the respondent. We use a standard questionnaire. This allows us to compare across countries and do overtime analysis. And our typical national sample of 1,200 or 2,400 respondents produce margins of sampling error of approximately plus or minus 2 or 3 percentage points. So for this discussion, I will mainly draw on our round 10 survey across 38 African countries. Before we get into the charts, I am sure many of you will ask the question exactly what we mean when we say someone is a youth. So far, there's no universal definition. The United Nations uses ages 15 to 24, the Commonwealth 15 to 29, while African Union uses the broader range of 15 to 35. For this presentation, we adapt the African Union definition. Since Afrobarometer interviewed adults aged 18 and above, we define youth as respondents aged 18 to 35. Although at some point in the presentation, we will see breakdown for age 18 to 25, 26 to 35. And so let's begin with migration. We asked the question, how much, if at all, have you considered moving to another country to live? We find that substantial numbers of young Africans have considered leaving their countries to live abroad. Among 18 to 25-year-olds, almost 6 in 10, which is 57%, report having considered immigration at least a little bit, including 34% who have thought about it a lot. Similarly, more than half, which is about 52% of older youth aged 26 to 35 report having considered moving abroad. Interest in immigration declines somewhat with age to 36% among those aged 36 and older who say they have considered moving abroad. So this is a clear generational pattern where we find young Africans are much more likely to be thinking about leaving their home country. But averages can hide a lot. Africa is not one country, and young people's experiences differ considerably by country. We can see cross-country variations in interest in immigration. Interest rates are lowest among youth in Tanzania, 9%, Madagascar, 11%, and Seychelles, 12%, but rise to about two-thirds in Gambia, 67%, Cabo Verde, 66%, Liberia, 66%, and Guinea-Bissau. And here in Ghana, the figure is also quite high at about 63% or more than 6 in 10 young people. Knowing how many young people are considering leaving is only part of the story. The more important question is why? And this is where the story becomes much clearer. Among young people who have considered immigration, 52%, which is more than half, say their most important reason is to find work or better job opportunities. Another 18%, or almost 1 in 5, point to economic hardship. Other motivations include education, social factors, political factors, and poverty. So for many young Africans, migration is fundamentally connected to economic opportunity. Now, once someone decides that opportunity may exist somewhere else, there is an obvious next question. Where exactly is somewhere else? And this leads us to preferred destination. Europe and North America clearly dominate. About 3 in 10 prospective immigrants prefer Europe, while another 3 in 10 prefer North America. Together, these two destinations account for almost 6 in 10 preferred destinations. But rather than focusing only on where young people want to go, let's come back home. Because if jobs are the leading motivation for living, we need to ask, what does the employment situation facing young Africans actually look like? Among 18 to 25-year-olds, about 45% are not employed and are looking for work. Only about 1 in 10 of this age cohort are employed full-time. Among 26 to 35-year-olds, full-time employment rises roughly 1 in 4, which is about 24%, but about 4 in 10, which is about 40%, are still unemployed and looking for work. So the migration findings begin to make a little more sense. If you are young, looking for work, struggling to enter the labor market, and believe better opportunities exist elsewhere, migration can begin to look less like an adventure and more like an economic strategy. But lack of jobs is only one part of the problem. Even where opportunities exist, what prevents young people from accessing them? The leading barrier identified is lack of adequate training, mentioned by about 1 in 4 respondents. Almost 1 in 5 points to lack of experience. Similar number points to unwillingness to work certain jobs, such as those in agriculture or difficult jobs, and others identify skill mismatch. And here we find one of the greatest frustrations about the labor market, because employers are asking you to get experience before you get a job. Meanwhile, you need a job to get the experience. But the serious point is that job creation alone is not enough. There is also a need to equip young people with the skills, training, and pathways to employment. But suppose young people had a choice. What kind of work would they actually want? This is one of the findings I find particularly interesting. Across all age groups, the most popular choice is start my own business. Among 18 to 25-year-olds, it is almost exactly half. Among 26 to 35 years old, it is slightly higher, more than 5 in 10. Public sector employment comes a distant second. So young Africans are not simply saying, government, please employ us. Many are saying, give us the opportunity to create something ourselves. The entrepreneurial ambition is clear here. The question is whether the financing and business environment have received this memo. And this takes us directly to policy. Instead of deciding what young people need on their behalf, what happens when we simply ask them where government should invest? Their answer is remarkably consistent with everything we have seen so far. Across the 38 countries, almost half of young people identify job creation as the highest priority for additional government investment in youth programs. Education comes next at about 17%, followed by job training and business loans. And again, there are substantial country differences. Here in Ghana, about 65%, which is nearly two-thirds, prioritize job creation. We see differences in Seychelles, where we have about 27% of the youth who are saying government should prioritize education, and this is more than 22% who thinks the government should focus on job creation. And this is where I think the story really comes together. Earlier, we saw that more than half of young people considering migration say they are looking for work or better jobs. Now, when we ask where governments should invest, almost half say job creation. Those are not two separate findings, they are two sides of the same story. Young Africans are searching for opportunity, and when they cannot see that opportunity at home, many begin to imagine it elsewhere. But opportunity isn't only about jobs and income. It is also about whether young people feel they have a place in shaping their societies. So I end this presentation with findings on leadership. We ask young people for each of the following statements. Please tell me whether you disagree or agree. Our community leaders and organizations are doing a good job of building and promoting young leaders. The finding is quite sobering. Across the 38 countries, only about 31%, which is roughly 3 in 10 young people, agree that their community leaders and organizations are doing a good job of building and promoting young leaders. In other words, about two-thirds disagree. And the country differences are enormous. Agreement is fewer than 1 in 10 in Nigeria and about 15% in Ghana, compared with close to 7 in 10 in Tanzania and Gabon. So opportunity is not only about being able to work, it is also about being able to participate, influence decisions, and lead. To conclude, these data are not simply telling us that young Africans want to leave. They are telling us that young Africans want opportunity to work, to build businesses, and to lead. And when these opportunities are difficult to find at home, many naturally begin to look elsewhere. So perhaps the question is not about how do we stop young Africans from leaving, but how do we make staying a real choice? For those who may not be aware, we just launched our third flagship report titled Beyond Borders, Citizen Perspective on a Shifting Global Order. We have some interesting findings in there that I would entreat or to have a look. Thank you so much. I hand over back to you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Kofi. And I see you're receiving so much love and claps. Thank you for painting such a striking picture for us. And basically just telling us that one person's reasons are not the same, the next person's reasons. And the reasons for wanting to migrate vary across the continent, across the world, across young people. And just to put you guys on spotlight, I was going through last week's issue of The Continent, and I'm always very, very interested to see what your data says. And yeah, actually, last week's issue on The Continent, your data was spotlighting migration dynamics across Africa, across young people. So thank you so much for keeping The Continent also informed on that end. And thank you for painting for us the picture that we need to start thinking about, and, you know, giving us the frame to what comes next in the next conversation. And like you say, the question is, what do we need to do as a continent, as a policymakers, as researchers, as regional and continental institutions, as the media, to make it possible for our young people to stay and to make that stay more effective. So to just take this conversation to our panelists, who are going to be bringing 5 regional comparative conversational dynamics. And the first part of our conversation is going to focus on why young people are leaving. And our first panelist that I'm going to ask the first question is actually Dr. Martha Njiri, representing Kenya from East Africa and also the Horn of Africa. Dr. Martha is the head of strategic communications at IGAD, focusing on violent extremism prevention, dialogue, and Horn migration routes. So my question to Dr. Martha will be, your work looks at preventing violent extremism and the role of communications. What are you seeing in relation to young people leaving the Horn of Africa, and particularly the eastern route to Yemen? And are there any links between these migration journeys and the factors that can make young people vulnerable to radicalization?
Thank you very much, Susan. It is a delight to be part of this critical conversation. And maybe to start us off, I want to briefly frame the perspective that I'll be bringing into this discussion, which is primarily from prevention of violent extremism, and as well as a strategic communication perspective. And I think it is very important to have this distinction because when we speak of migration of the young people, we are really looking at a broader socio-economic and human phenomena. So I would be very cautious to look at this mobility through a security lens. And as it has been said before, you know, young people are moving because they have aspirations, because they want better employment opportunities. They're looking for independence to build a better future. So for me, looking at this prevention perspective is what happens when these aspirations encounter exclusion, which I'll be looking into, and as well as the limited opportunities. We are seeing misinformation, as we have talked about, in the digital spaces, as well as in the offline spaces, which may be pushed by peers. and of course, the exploitation and unsafe environments. And from a strategic communication point of view, I'm particularly interested in looking at the question that we have been alluded to there before. What are the young people hearing? Who are they listening to? Who do they trust? And can they be able to distinguish a genuine opportunity from a deceptive one? Now, if I'm to look at the Horn of Africa and the question that you have asked me, I would, of course, approach this question with a bit of caution because we should not have these simplistic, casual relationship of migration and violent extremism. So to say is that migration does not make young people susceptible to radicalization into violent extremism. And in itself, it is not a security problem, but rather when we look at the deceptive environment that these migration, as I've said, even in the digital spaces, and people getting into the migration process can be able to create these vulnerabilities that may be exploited by the criminal or the organized groups and armed actors. So I want to acknowledge, let me first start by acknowledging that there have been documented situations in which vulnerable migrants have been exploited, have been coerced, and recruited into these groups. And when we look at the eastern route through Yemen, there have been reports which are documented of Africans being forcibly recruited by the Houthis and being transferred into these training facilities. And looking at a prevention perspective, which I'm focusing on, this is very important because it does not mean that this migration causes violent extremism or recruitment into violent extremism, but rather how these unsafe migration environments intersect with violence, with exploitation, and these armed actors. So when we look at these conditions, that make the young people, more resilient to, or rather to be exploited, to be manipulated, and to be coerced. We look at the things of economic opportunities. Again, I repeat these. So I want to just have this emphasis that prevention, from my perspective, is about understanding these conditions that can be able to increase the vulnerabilities, such as wanting better economic opportunities, and also looking at how can we strengthen these factors to help the young people to resist this exploitation and manipulation. So as I've just mentioned, is who is shaping these young people's understanding of migration. So what promises are being made to them? One of the things that I'm very passionate about is about these narratives that actually make it very juicy for the young people to actually fall and to be lured into. And I want to also bring the issue of maybe the influencers, which may not be very popular. But if, we look at the institutions communicating through these formal websites and so on, we may be communicating, but not necessarily reaching the young people in the spaces where these decisions they are making are being shaped. That is why I see strategic communication more than an awareness rising, but part of it being the protective environment around young people. Susan, I don't know, I have said it in so many words, but I think you get the gist of where I am headed and how we need to look at it from a perspective of strategic communication. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martha, for also bringing our attention to the role of strategic communications when in the right hands, how it can also be used to, first of all, making it possible for young Africans to stay in the continent, but also if they have to move, then how do we also make it safe? And what are some of the risks that they are exposed to along, the migration routes when it comes to, falling victim of radicalization and being recruited in violent extremism. So thank you so much for painting that picture across, Eastern Route to Yemen. But now the conversation I want to take to Enya, and we want to talk about the aspect of trust in institutions that are there to, first of all, make sure that young people have conducive environments to stay, to either move, and to also, find it conducive to where they're going to. So Enya Echeng is representing Nigeria from West Africa, the chairperson to Africa Youth for Transnational Justice. He's the deputy director Deputy Executive Director, and they focus on transnational justice, youth participation, and governance. So my question to you, Enya, is your work in transitional justice most of the time looks at what happens when young people lose trust and hope in their institutions and in their leaders in whatever context. So how does that loss of trust and hope influence young people's decisions about whether they want to stay or whether they want to leave their countries?
Thank you very much, Susan, and thank you to the organizers for putting together such a very timely conversation. Um, it's a very interesting question that you've asked, and to just provide some context to my background, my work sits at the intersection of youth engagement in transitional justice processes. As we know, across Africa, a lot of our societies are transitioning. Or to just give a little bit of idea into what transitional justice is, it's the plethora of measures that societies implement in trying to ensure accountability, restitution, and guaranteeing non-occurrence of conflict, particularly when these societies are moving from a period of a long decades of conflict or repression to more equitable system. So I work in this context, and while I try to localize my experience to West Africa, a lot of my work is with the African Union, is across the continent of Africa. So please, to other speakers, forgive me if I may touch on some of the things that concern your regions in my conversation. You've asked a very interesting question. How do we perceive the component of trust in this entire migration conversation? But I think first we need to start by understanding that migration is not only an economic decision, but largely a question of trust and belonging for me. Again, maybe influenced by my background in transitional justice and human rights work. Because a lot of times, as we have seen across different parts of the continent, whether it's in Africa, in West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, and all the rest of the regions, when young people lose the confidence that their institutions will protect their basic rights, create the basic opportunities, or even allow them to participate meaningfully in decisions about their future, they begin to ask a very simple question. If I cannot build a future here, where the type of future that I want for myself, where can I build it? And really, for me, this is where the linkage with transitional justice becomes very important, because in the context, like I mentioned, where we are implementing transitional justice process, we're rebuilding a social contract. We're talking about decades-long oppression, bad governance, a lot of institutional corruption, systemic rot. But we're talking about these kind of systems, right? Essentially rebuilding social contract after conflict, or a very grave period of political violence. Then even outside these settings, we have also seen consistently that these institutions have failed young people. I'm sorry, just a second. I think I'm getting the pause. Just give me a second. I'm getting someone interrupts my.
As Enya sorts the technical issues on his end, just keep your thoughts and questions rolling in as we listen in. Back to you, Enya.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that. I just got someone trying to reach me. Yeah, but the point I was making is really I was just trying to draw the nexus between the need for trust, especially in very fragile contexts, for societies that are emanating from these long periods of repression. We're looking to see how they rebuild in post-conflict settings. And we see this across Africa in very many different ways. A young person who has a university degree but has no meaningful employment opportunity, they might even go on to participate in elections, but they do not feel their votes really translate into influence. They see corruption, impunity, and conclude that this system is not designed for us. A lot of African countries, including my country, Kenya, and a few others, South Sudan, will be going to the polls in another couple of months. But for the young people within this context, what does this really mean for them? Then it just leaves them with oftentimes a very simple solution, migration. Then it becomes, and I want to earn more money. But sometimes it also is, I want to live in a place where my efforts will be rewarded and my future is a lot more predictable. And that's oftentimes what a lot of these other contexts provide for young people, that predictability. I'm currently joining this. I'm currently joining this call from. I'm currently joining this call from Geneva, where I have been for quite some time now, trying to engage in my studies. But it's exciting to see that a lot of these things that I'm doing now, much of what I do in Europe, I could also have done in Africa. To just provide you some context, I did a master's degree in Nigeria, and it took me about 4 years, and I'm a very dedicated, diligent student. And it took me about 4 years to finalize the process, um, despite all the disruptions that we faced with that system. Of course, COVID happened around the time, so that sort of took 1 year off it. But then for the same program or similar program that I moved to Europe to do, I've been able to finish that in just under 1 year. So again, what does that leave a young person grappling with having to make these very important decisions? Oftentimes, it's the more logical explanation is I don't have trust in this system that I'm going to even get into school and finish at a certain time. So why should I go through that process? Why don't I look to where these opportunities can happen for me faster? There's a lot more predictability with the system, right? And even your recent study, I think I left and joined the call back around when the first presenter was making presentations. You see that there's a significant erosion of trust. So a lot of these things affect how young people perceive the system when they no longer trust their governments. Particularly, like I said, given my background in transitional justice, they would want to escape that repression. Imagine you've lived through wars. Imagine you've lived through repression, and now the society is trying to rebuild. I think for a lot of young people in this context, it's like we've just seen a window for us to escape this chaos of a country or of a continent or of a context, right? So I would say trust is essentially a very critical component of the migration equation. If young people must trust their institutions, they may still migrate, but migration becomes like Yvonne mentioned in her remarks, it becomes a choice rather than them seeing it as an escape outlet. Yeah, so I think that's just a few points I'd like to note on that. And I
Thank you
apologize
so much,
for the
Enya.
interruption, please.
No problem at all. And I think you are speaking literally everything that is on every young person's mind who is from Africa and who has also had a chance to travel the world and seen, what are the realities in other continents, and, just wish that systems back at home would be working as much as I'm seeing systems in other continents working. And so one thing you've told us is that, especially, well, in Western Africa, and let's just say the whole continent, trust is one issue. But then when you go to Southern Africa, where now I'm going to call in Professor Kubai, the gap that seems to be the most consistent, and I think it is shared across the continent, is that what is promised on paper is very different from what is ratified or what is seen on the ground. So allow me to introduce Professor Mikate Kiso Kubai, representing the Southern African region. He's from South Africa. He's a senior researcher at the University of Johannesburg, and his focus is on global political economy, regional integration, and something called BRICS in abbreviation. So maybe, Professor, you'll tell us what BRICS means. But my question for you will be, as you come in to tell us more about, the Southern Africa situation, is Southern Africa has talked about free movement for many years, but the Southern African Development Community Free Movement Protocol has still not been ratified. So what does this tell us about the gap between what the government says about regional integration and what young people are actually experiencing on the ground?
Yeah, thank you so much, my sister, for introducing me and inviting me to this conversation. A couple of things. Just quickly on the BRICS matter, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, of course, accompanied by Indonesia, and the UAE, Ethiopia, and Egypt, and Iran. Saudi
Thank you.
Arabia have one foot in and one foot out, yet to be confirmed. Of course, there are a range of partner countries, including Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and a host of others. Right? Um, it's important, to mention outfits such as, BRICS, as well, because when you're looking at this issue that we're talking about, especially on the dimension of development partnerships, right? It is important, for Africa to, think wisely, consider very carefully the sort of meaningful partnerships, that, it wants to enter, in order to achieve, this Africa that we say we all of us want, right? By 2063, or maybe even beyond that, we will see. Right? Now, the second issue, on SADC, where we just had a summit this past weekend, that one of the issues, main issues on the agenda was a review, of decisions taken and what has been, achieved, not achieved, and why they have not been achieved if they haven't been achieved, right? And what we do know, is that, and this is continent wide, it's not only, a SADC, challenge. Well, we do know that, integration, regional integration, is a nightmare, for, various reasons. And one of them, includes, this issue of governance, one of them includes this issue of security, one of them includes, this issue of, just the capacity of the economy, to be able to absorb, yeah, there are a range, of issues that are involved, in the success or failure, of the project, of regional integration. All of us, can agree. Well, all of us agree that, that's the route to go. Of course, you want, to integrate. You want to integrate. You want, the economies to work, as seamlessly, together, almost as one. Right. In fact, SADC, one of the agendas of SADC, is to, eventually even have a single currency. That's, literally on their website, SADC website, a single currency. And to arrive at that, you have to get through a customs union. You have to achieve that. You have to achieve, borderless, for instance, movement, that sort of thing. And a whole host, of arrangements, need to be achieved, first, before you can even arrive at that level of integration of the economy. A smoother single, what is it, payment system, if you like, or clearance house, and so on. So there's quite a lot, in the offing that has to be achieved in order to arrive at that point. Now, economies of the SADC countries, economies of SADC, are not the same, right? No, the size, is not the same. The geography, is not yeah, neighbors, yes, true, but, geography, nature, size of economy, not the same. You have governance systems that are not identical either, right? You have, various capacities, varying capacities, right, within, the state, the various states, and so on, to achieve certain things. But what we do know, what we do have in common, all of us, is one, we've got minerals, under the soil. We've got, ambition, all of us, we've got, common challenges, all of us. We all have to educate young people. We all have to provide employment for young people. We all have to provide funding, for young people to innovate, to, establish startups, and so on and so forth, right? And we can discuss, the rate of funding for young people on the continent wide, for startups, which isn't so good, compared to other regions of the world, and so on and so forth. And so on. So we've got these variances, in, the different economies of member states of SADC, right? And then it makes, of course, the process of integration, a little bit harder, because, for instance, some may say, if, the one's economy is in a particular situation, one that is stronger, people in the one that is stronger may say that, hang on, but this one has to come up to a particular level first before we can, have, a better level of integration, if you like. Whether through, technical cooperation or technical systems, through the Reserve Bank, such as, your payment systems, and so on and so forth, right? And so on. So that all of these, complications, that, have led, to, the slowness, if you like, of progress, towards attaining, the agenda that, has long been set, by SADC. as
Yeah.
well. In fact, the long agenda, long set agenda, by the African Union itself, quite broadly, the 15, flagship projects, and so on, also, quite, are battling, to get going. Africa Continental Free Trade Area is at least one, major success we can celebrate, and a few others, and so on. So these are some of the challenges, my sister, that, both SADC, and the continent, face. There are two more I would like to, throw into the pot, right? You see, the issue of mobilizing resources, right, to attend to these issues that I've just raised, is urgent, but it's also a very difficult one.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of money floating around in the region or on the continent, right? But yet the continent and the region are really very wealthy. It's not well known. You talk about the DRC alone. The DRC is sitting on potentially $24 trillion worth of minerals right now. 24 trillion, right? Now that's like the size of the economy of China, for instance, right? That just those minerals, alone. Now, imagine the rest of the continent, including, the discoveries of oil, gas, and so on and so forth. Africa has, abundance, of wealth that is yet to be, turned into actual cash, right?
Yeah.
Wealth, in that sense. But we need to be able to, we need to do this, and we need to do this, very fast, very quickly, because our population is growing. By 2050, it may hit 2.5 billion, on the continent, right? We need, to accelerate, the what is it, the mobilization of, domestic resources, all of this, these resources that we need, to be able to build the infrastructure, the health infrastructure, well, rather the social infrastructure broadly, the economic infrastructure, the security infrastructure, and so on and so forth, and make, conditions for young people, who constitute the majority, vast majority, in the region of around 70% of this population on the continent, right? Um, a big issue under discussion, at SADC was, the rate of unemployment of young people, right? The rate of unemployment of young people in South Africa is sitting at what, just under 34%, 36%, sorry, and so on. And that's, a crisis, that, we're facing, both, in South Africa, in SADC, continent wide, how we are going to actually be able to, generate employment, generate, opportunities for young people to also innovate, how we're going to, look at, research and development, projects, for young people to get into, and so on and so forth, right? So
Yeah.
mobilizing the resources, to invest, in the development of our people, in the infrastructure, both economic and social, is a major challenge, and a challenge that we, all of us, need to, tackle. And, two things: motivate, our respective agents, in governments, but as well as, monitor, on a regular basis, to check if decisions are being implemented, and if not, why not, and, try to offer solutions. There's also this last point, my sister, to make, before I hog the space. The G20 presidency last year, right? Also, focus quite a bit, on critical minerals. These are, minerals for future technologies, and so on and so forth, right? And are also actually quite vital for defense and security and all of those things. Colleagues, I'm sure, would be familiar, with these things, and so on. And in fact, there's actually even a charter. The G20, a couple of months back, where was this? Avian, France, right? It has, one of the declarations, and a declaration or a statement actually on statement on critical minerals, and they need to partner with African continent and with the global South broadly to develop then beneficiate minerals at source and so on and so forth, disrupt the whole from whole to port system that has been in existence for many decades, and so on, and just create value addition and so on. So has SADC, been discussing this over the past weekend, right? The whole move, to industrialize, and fast, industrialize, create at least, if, we can't get to, a common currency, at least, have a common market, right? Be able to be one market and take advantage of the over 400 million, population, that is in SADC, to be able to generate, industrial, growth, industrial development, establish value chains, new value chains when need be, and so on and so forth. These are the areas that are at least on the face of it are being attended to, and one has to laud this effort, but also be quite critical in the pace of implementation, the nature of implementation, and the relative of course outcomes of such programs. I'll leave it there, my sister, for the time being.
Thank you so much, Prof. You're a man of wisdom, and thank you so much, because you started by saying that regional integration is a nightmare, but you also were able to paint for us, what is the challenge and what are some of the solutions that we can actually employ. And I think from our audience listening and those of us watching, each one of us has been able to pick something, one or two things they can do within their capacity to make sure that we are also aiding the systems in ratifying some of these protocols that exist to enable migration to be easier, safer, and more of a choice for young people. Now, as we talk about the gap between what is said and what is done, we want to also look at the dynamics that come with variations around disaggregated information and data by gender, which is where North Africa's story gets more specific. And I'm about to call in Abby to share with us. We often hear that young people, educated people in cities, are more likely to consider migrating. So the question to Abby is, does that tell the full story for young women in North Africa, or are there important differences we need to understand? And before you come in to speak, I'd just like to let everyone know who you are. So Abby is representing Tunisia, North Africa. She is a gender expert, representing Fahad Hasht Institute, and her focus is on gender, climate justice, youth, civic participation in the MENA region. Thank you and welcome, Abby.
Thank you, everyone, for this very interesting topic that we need to discuss. And as a young woman, I'm 33 years old, and I'm coming from Tunisia. And I'm someone who used to travel and who used to live in the UK for my master's degree. And I'm someone who deliberately chose to go back to my country, and currently working of the well-known convention of immigration between Tunisia, youth mobilization between Tunisia and Italy. It's one of the most famous conventions that allow youth to go work as labor forces for Italy. I was thinking about how to start my speech and what to say. In a country where people now are frustrated of total blackout of electricity, energy problems. As someone who is living in a city that is the most affected by climate change issues, pollution, and the chemical industry effects, what are my answers to stay? Is my problem is that I'm not getting well paid, or my problem is that I cannot have a proper air or like water to drink in a century that is known by globalization and artificial intelligence, and we are talking about like development and things that any young person is aspiring to do like a better future. If we ask youth, and especially the youth that I'm dealing with every day, who keeps asking me, when will be my paper ready? I need my visa ready to go to Italy to work. So my question was, were these people really looking for economic a better situation? Are they really looking just for money and like just to buy a new car maybe, like, or to have a better salary, or they are looking for adventure, or they are just tired of being like victims of economic employment gaps, of not being heard by the government, or by the lack of employment. And if we see like if we talk like to policymakers, they think about urban youth like packing their like luxury bags and moving to Europe or to Gulf countries recently to have better future. But the reality for young women is totally different from that. Because if I get graduated and I'm someone who is holding two master's degree, and I struggle to find a job in a country that promotes equality between men and women, but I find myself jobless. And if we see like recent studies, like even like in Tunisia or Algeria or Egypt, like the female enrollment rates are really high, exceeding 35% in Tunisia, over 45% in Egypt, but still like women cannot find access to formal jobs. It's a systemic occupational segregation, wage gap, women exploitation in work, like related to unpaid care, restricted mobility to like urban cities, especially women who live in rural areas. So here is we have a problem of access to opportunities. And even if there are opportunities, these opportunities are not fair opportunities and real opportunities that allow young women to work, to mobilize, to feel heard, and to look for a better future. And if we talk about this kind of aspirations and the political situation, the economic situation, we cannot like avoid talking about the climate degradation and the problems that we are having like here in Tunisia. And especially it's a country that is fully focused on agriculture incomes, and the sector of agriculture is primarily led by women. And also the case in Algeria or in Morocco, or also like in South Egypt, in cities like Said or any kind of cities. So the problem is, do we really encourage women to work, and we give them space and margin to have like this decent and legitimate, let's say, care system, opportunities to flourish and to bloom in their countries. So this is what makes them really think of migrating. And here, it's not even a problem of a choice to stay or to leave. It's something that is not even like possible or in the pocket list of these women. Because if I am an urban woman, like with full access to the city opportunities, with the problem of decentralization now that we are all calling for, that you cannot even like cross the borders from your city to reach the capital to be able to look for opportunities outside. And even with the policies and the conventions that they are doing, they are merely male dominant sectors, like marine work or it's like linked to marine work or construction, that young women are really excluded from this type of jobs. So here the question is not whether we chose to stay or we chose to leave. It's like we are struggling to survive our like normal and basic rights to work, to have like a normal like a healthcare system, to be protected from violation, from exploitation. And also here we can speak about our sisters who come from other countries, like the sub-Saharan African people who live with us here in Tunisia, and the conditions that they are living before they choose to leave to Italy or to Europe through the borders, through the sea, also like like a lot of women drown in the sea because they cannot survive in these conditions in this country, and they cannot arrive safely to this the place that we think it's our refuge from like to refuge from the atrocities that we are living. So the question is not only about to leave or to get a visa to leave your country for better like economic situation. It's never about merely economical situation. It's about finding a place and feeling belonging and looking for settlement. Sometimes we are looking for ourselves. We are not only looking for money. We are looking to be heard. We are looking to have our rights, to be able to speak up without being afraid of saying the truth about like for not being afraid to raise our voices about other women, about other immigrants from other countries who come to our country. Here in Tunisia, to speak about immigration is something very sensitive, and you need to calculate the words, and you need to like speak in your head before you open your mouth to speak about normal basic human rights. And as a woman, I don't want to fail any other women who want to survive, who want to work, who want to have her own entreprise. Or who want to simply choose to leave because she is not able to live in such condition. So I'm not being pessimistic, but I want to say that leaving should be a choice. If you want to leave, immigration is a human right. You can leave. But if you want to stay, you need to stay in a country that respects you, that listens to you, that think about the future generation, about the climate crisis, who are really affecting our reproductive rights, our reproductive health, that we are living in conditions that needs we sit in a table and we need to support each other. And here is a call for all of you, like women or men or anyone who belongs and has the African nationality and the African blood, that we are brothers and sisters across the globe. We need to consolidate our work together and to have such conversations, to think about having this similarities, and to think about things that unites us rather than to encourage people to leave. Because I think if we do good ties together and we collaborate, it's going to be an opportunity for women to flourish and for young men also to be a support system, because there is no gender justice without climate justice. And I may finish my words by saying that I chose to stay in Tunisia because finding an easy solution for me as someone who is a holder of a master's degree from the UK may seem very easy, but a choice to stay, I believe it's hard, honestly, but I think that there is in this life there is a lot to discover, a lot to give for my country, and as I said, I don't want to fail other women who needs to be supported and who needs to be heard, using the English or the French language or the Arabic language to make their voices heard is my responsibility and your responsibility as African youth or African activists. Yeah. So maybe we can talk later about safe migration, and I can give you my insights about it. But for now, I keep calling for climate justice.
Thank you so much, Abir, and we honor you for being so brave to stay for the sake of other girls and women and other young people. And I totally agree with you. Movement needs to be choice, not by default. And even those who choose to migrate, they migrate because they cannot stay where they are, because it is not conducive to them, simply to just stay safe and survive and stay alive. So thank you so much for sharing your heart and your thoughts and insights on that. We have heard from four regions in Africa, from Southern Africa, West Africa, North Africa, and East Africa. Now we would like to zoom out or zoom in a little bit? Zoom out to the continental level and look at the AU level. And I would like to introduce our fifth panelist, Dr. Temitope Ako. from Nigeria. He's the former AU Youth for Peace Program Coordinator between 2018 and 2023. He's also an unresident fellow at NYU Center for Global Affairs, and the focus is on governance, peace, and security youth policy frameworks. My question to you, Dr. Ako, is having worked both within the multilateral institutions and now from outside them, where do you see the biggest gap between what African continental frameworks say about youth mobility and what happens on the ground?
Thank you so much, Susan, and thanks to the organizers for having me. When we talk about the gap between policy and the ground, I think the first question to ask is, what does policy seek to do? And policy seeks to not regulate youth movement, but to provide certain conditions that are suitable in terms of movement of all persons. And in this regard, you have your migration policies and frameworks. But coming to Africa, I think what we should sort of focus on is what policies are being put in place to ensure that young people can derive the benefits of being Africans. Previous speakers have spoken about the lack of trust, opportunities, just being heard, human rights protection, and all these things. And when you look at the totality of that, the question you ask is, how is Africa responding? In this regard, one of the flagships that I would spotlight in this conversation is the AFCFTA, and that's really important because this is a really innovative initiative that is seeking to recognize the wealth that Africa has, and it's not just about the wealth, but it's also linking it to peace and security, because without peace and security, there's no trade, there's no development. So it sort of looks at all of this under a big umbrella. And I remember when I was in the African Union, still with the Youth for Peace program, one of the things that I did was to I did relate with AFCFTA Secretariat to say, if we're having this conversation, a really big part of it is youth. Not simply because, of their statistical advantage, which people seem to reiterate more often than not, but because young people have their lived experiences, they have their skill sets, they have their education, they're resilient, they're up there when it comes to just being able to adapt in the world that we live in with tech and all that. And what we were able to do was to begin to have those conversations so that young people were able to feed into that process of policy making, such that the AFCFTA, the protocol on women and youth, would really make sense in terms of being in touch with the realities on the ground. So when we hear about the different reasons why people are leaving, and you look at that protocol, you will see that it's not saying to young people, stay or go, but what it's actually doing is providing a framework for 55 member states and multilateral institutions to open up the spaces available for young people to interact with policy. However, a couple of gaps. One, frameworks are fantastic, but if they do not come within the purview to the spaces of the primary beneficiaries, then they are really serving little or no good. So if we take a poll of young people who are on this webinar and ask if they know that there's actually a protocol for women and youth on the FCFTA, how many will say yes? So there's a responsibility on the part of policy institutions to ensure that they are trickling down information that is useful to that target. But it's not one-sided. I've said, when I was with the AU severally to young people, that it takes the same data, it takes the same time, and it's the same attention you dedicate to, figuring out what Cardi B wore to some event as it takes to figure out the opportunities that the continent is availing you. So it's two sides of the same coin, really. There's responsibility on the part of policy institutions and member states, and the FCFTA, like I said, is a great example. But there's also that responsibility to ensure that it's able to its intentions, reach those they are meant for, and they're able to then use them. Um, and when we talk about migration, within the FCFTA, that's obviously an African thing, but there's also migration to, Europe and the Americas, where we have more young Africans interested in moving to. And I think relating this to the data sets that we saw, why is it that the younger sets are more intent or voicing intention to leave than those who are, slightly older? And I would posit that this is probably because now the realities of life and the opportunity to avail themselves of some of the policy outcomes, be they national or continental, um, are motivating them to explore alternatives inside of the continent, including their countries. So I think that if we sort of dissect the data a little bit more, then, to sort of find out why, it's the younger youth than the slightly older who are looking to leave, I think we might find this. But just to answer that question briefly, I think what we really should be looking at is what are the frameworks? Africa has fantastic frameworks. I think implementation has always been the problem. How can we bring young people to know them, relate with them, utilize them, feedback on them, and have, a better life, and make, if you like, more informed decisions on if, when, and how to then migrate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ako, for also, I think you have also answered my next question on, how does the climate, the environment, pressures influence young people's decisions to live? I think I wanted to also find out, do you think we are talking about this enough? Do you think the African continent and the systems and the politicians and even the public and the citizens ourselves, we are talking about, how the environment shapes and influences young people's decisions to live enough? Or do you think we need to do better?
Well, especially in AU member states where there's conflict, the stress of environmental stresses are more pronounced. In some instances, this drives young people to leave. But I think what we should really think about when we're talking about, the environment is it affecting just the young people? No, it's sort of a universal thing. How should young people be responding? If every young person upped and left, then what will be left of the continent? Now, the question I will ask back, and this is my challenge to young people I've worked with, what are the opportunities you see emanating from an environmental crisis? What are the solutions as a young person that you can bring to bear on the continent? Now, for me, I would say going off to Europe or America, you will end up in, if you're lucky, a corporate job, right? You go to an office, you get paid on the 30th day of the month. Staying back here gives you the opportunity to contribute to society. It gives you the opportunity to create solutions to real problems. It enables you use your environment, by not the environmental resources now, but just your lived environment to create, right? And I think this is the beauty that we see when you look at a country like Nigeria and fintech, right? It's folks under 40 who started in their early 30s because they saw a need. So if we bring this to that sort of environmental factors, right? How can we increase water supply? How can we increase food supply? How can we use drones? How can we finance agric? How can we do advocacy? And all these don't just create jobs, but they solve real problems. So for me, I think it's also a call to action on the part of young people. Of course, governments and multilateral institutions have a role to play.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari. In here, we say Dr. Ari to mean doctor, and for posing that challenge. For those of us who have been lucky to travel out of our countries, I am sure you have seen one or two things that we can borrow and bring back in our countries. So what the doctor is actually challenging is if you're going to be moving out of our countries, are we going to make it worth it? And are we also thinking about coming back and making it better for other young people not to find reason to move out? And talking about the climate as one of the pressure points that most people don't really name, as well as the environment just around, within, and without. Gender is also another pressure point that people don't really think so much about, or basically, yeah, the intentions are a bit varied. And I'm coming back to Abir on what do you think safe actually means in practice? When we talk about making migration safe, what does safety look like for young women compared with young men? And are current migration systems doing enough to address those differences, in your opinion? Please unmute, Abe. There you go.
Thank you so much. And here I will be sharing my perspective about the concept of safety, which is the most important concern, like for human being, like despite being young men or young women mobilizing. So too often migration policy equates safety with legal passport and strict border security. But for young women on the move, having a legal visa or traveling through formal channels does not automatically make her safe. So I will be sharing a gender response definition of safety that encompasses protection against gender-based violence, sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and access to essential reproductive health care along the tourism route and in the destination countries. And someone who is living in Tunisia, they have worked closely with organizations that provide support and healthcare for immigrants coming from sub-Saharan Africa, like, or whether coming from the Libyan borders, trying to cross to Italy. I think it's one of the most important things to provide like safe like transit for immigrants, whether they are a young woman or a young man. And even if you get the chance to get a visa and to go to Europe or Gulf countries in a legal way, and women think that this is a great opportunity, the problem of getting into like domestic violence or like getting low paid jobs that does not provide like decent and legal and humanitarian conditions of work is something that young women are really suffering from. And we can see this like with the experience of young women like traveling and being like exploded. For instance, if we see the kind of conventions made between Tunisia and Italy, or legal seasonal workers agreement between Europe and the North African states, mainly Morocco, because like they share the borders with Spain. There is like the migration programs that recruit women for agricultural labor, and there are a lot of research that were made, and they confirmed that these pathways offer a legal transit for sure, but the conditions of women there that were not really adequate. There is no protection against workplace harassment, reproductive health support, and legal resources. So like the conditions of women really migrating, thinking for maybe fleeing exploitation in their countries, going to other countries doesn't make it necessarily a pleasing experience. Sometimes it's even worse because you will have language barriers, you will have exploitation, like more exploitation chances, because if there is the fear of going back home or being forced to go back, there is always a margin for exploitation. So there is for sure legal labor schemes, but it's always in the favor of male-dominated sector, like constructions, heavy transport, pushing young women into unregulated informal sectors, like, for example, domestic care. They operate entirely outside legal safety nets. And when we look at the transit zones, for example, in Libya, women are always victims of violation of sexual exploitation, of sexual assault, and if there is no existence for the civil society and the NGOs who work to protect and to try to intervene in such situation, women are really being victims of this kind of violation. And here comes our role as organization who advocate for safe immigration, as I said before, and I still stand with my ideas of immigration should be and must be a personal choice. And if it is the case, if people choose to migrate, it has to go through safe and legal and decent conditions, because even if we go to other countries seeking refuge somewhere else, or looking for better economic situation, or for freedom of expression, as it is the case of a lot of women who are fleeing the patriarchy, the heritage system, the lack of land ownership, the climate crisis. Some people are just fleeing like repression, traditions. So it is not always about money, but at least when I choose to flee from danger, I don't need to go and undergo another dangerous adventure by being exploited by other forces. And believe me, with the language barrier thing, and with the lack of connections in the host country that you are going to, it's going to be even more worse. So the policies and the conventions that the countries are making, it needs to focus about providing safe pathways to young women and young men to live. And as someone who is living in Tunisia, which is considered as one of the open spots for young African women and men to live, and here I'm talking about between inverted commas, about the illegal immigration, that they go by sea or by rural borders, like from Libya or from Spain. And we have seen what happened in Spain lately, where thousands of young women and men decided to flee to Ceuta via Spain. And it is something that is heart aching, honestly, to see people going through such dehumanizing experiences of being forced to go back to their homelands. So as someone who wants to be heard by our governments, I really aspire to see governments looking for new policies to protect their people, to make them stay deliberately by choice, to make them regain the hope to do better, to have more financial opportunities for young women and men to stay. And I don't want to be pessimistic, because Tunisia is one of the leading countries in terms of human rights, in terms of women's rights. We have the law 58 that promotes for economic independence for women, against domestic violence, against violence against women. And it's one of the things that we have really like feel empowered and really proud to have as Tunisian women, and we would.
Sorry, Abir, I think we lost you. Is it just me? Oh, it looks like she's experiencing some technical issues. Unfortunately, guys, we are actually just remaining with 1 minute. And we had so many more questions to ask our panelists, but we have to also draw some attention to our audience. And so far, we have only received one question from Daniel from GHA. And Daniel says, a lot of policies practically promote entrepreneurship, but my question is, when the youth start their own business, who are going to prioritize them? And I think Daniel answered himself, I think. He says, for example, a lot of luxury hotels and apartments are erected in major cities, but sincerely, who are the targeted customers? My point is the environment. If the government can control the trade industries where hiring is not based on books or pre-experience, the youth will feel safe to stay. And once everyone is busy working, those who want to create their business will get their own customers. I think the only question we had has also been answered by the questionnaire, the person. Welcome back, Abi. I think we lost you at some point. I don't know if you had finished your point, but allow me to give you
Yeah,
just
actually, I
1
have
minute.
finished my point. It was like on time. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and also sharing some of the insights on how we can make migration safe for both men and women. And allow me to just steal 5 minutes of your time to allow every panelist to just give us their last word of wisdom and what they can leave us with. Please, guys, allow every panelist just 1 minute so that they can give us a parting shot, and then we will let you guys go on with your days and evenings. Thank you, and I would like to start with Dr. Martha, and then we'll go to Enya, and then Kubai and Abir, and then we'll finish with Dr. Ako. Just 1 minute, every panelist. Your last words. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I think for me, okay, no. I think for I will that as I said, having trusted messengers is something that is critical for the youth, especially those who are considering to move. So for me, I'm going to say that a youth trusted messenger ecosystem for uninformed mobility is very critical to ensure that we are having the right information and that the narratives that are in the spaces are able to enable the youth to make informed choices as pertains to them migrating. So I would genuinely push for this and hope that then this can be able to inform the youth and help them make informed choices so that if they choose to stay, then it should be dignified. If they move to go, then it should also be safe and informed. And if they want to come back home, then there should be something meaningful to return to. But in all this is that there should be that trusted messenger ecosystem, which is going to support them in making these decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martha. I'm being told that for those who have questions, we can still address each of your questions if you can send them via email, or you can actually just send them as a comment to the YouTube video being streamed, because we have really quite run out of time. I would love to invite Enya for the last word.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Can you confirm that you can hear me, please?
Yes, I can see and hear you.
Okay, yes. I think my last words are just having listened to everybody. I think we must understand that the concept of youth is not a homogeneous group. We're not referring to one class of persons who are fleeing basic hardship in their countries. We're referring to people who have had to grapple with an intersectional life pretty much. There's a lot of things that may have led to that decision to move. For some, it's fleeing conflicts. In the course of my work, I work with a lot of young people across the continent who are fleeing conflict situations. And I may not agree with a lot of the context from my co-panelists about why young people move or why whether or not they should move in certain contexts. But I think that we need to first really get back to the drawing board and understand a very critical question, which is in trying to tackle this issue about migration. We should not be asking what should we do for young migrants, because that seems to be the approach of government or of our policymakers. The nature of the intervention is often what can we do for these young people. It should rather be a question about what do these young people think they want? What should their migration policy look like? What are some of the things they want to be addressed? Because if we do not look at it from their perspective, we ultimately will risk perpetuating the same circle of chaos that we have seen with a lot of these attempts at handling migration related issues. So young people must set the agendas. They must identify what the real problems are and not just simply respond to priorities that have already been predetermined by their government or development partners. I think that's my point about probably a solution to this issue on migration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And your next is Dr. Kubai. Professor Kubai, sorry. Welcome.
Dr. Kubai is just fine, my sister. Thank you so much. Um, it's just, mine, is more an optimistic, note, and one, really of encouragement, right? We've got a plethora of, challenges on the continent, and, but yet we've got solid human beings, but we've got, the manpower that, many regions of the world actually do not, right? By in comparison, we have, in fact, we're, pretty much about to become a net exporter of labor, if you like, because we've got manpower, in abundance. We've got talented, young people, very talented young people, in abundance, on our continent, and we've got minerals that are supposed to benefit, young people. Basically, we have ingredients that we need, that if we work together to make best, out of these ingredients, we'll, maybe able to resolve many of the problems. I'm optimistic. I think we can do it. It's doable. The Africa, we want, is certainly achievable, but it needs a lot of hard work. We have to fight for it. It's not going to come, on a plate, for us, given to us by someone from somewhere. We have to, all of us, make a contribution. We have to fight, to have it together, not against one another, but, together as Africans.
Thank you so much, Professor Kubai. Next is Abir. Please keep it under 1 minute.
Thank you. I aspire for any young woman or young man, like to still, like, in their hearts, they carry the love of their nations and they can sleep peacefully without being sad about the conditions of their countries. Because as I can copy one of the messages in our chat box, that anyone deserves to have a place to call home. So whether we leave or we stay, when we think about our flags, our country, we need to have the sense of love and belonging to our countries. No matter is the condition, no matter is the economic situation, we need to always keep having hope and belief that our country can be flourishing and it can be a peaceful place to continue our life in and for the future generations to come, because it's the responsibility of everyone to care about the climate for the coming generation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Abir. And finally, Dr. Temitope.
Thank you so much, Susan. I mean, final words. I want to recommend a song. It's by an artist called Adekunle Gold, and it's Ire. I've posted it, and it's just talking about migration, how people think the grass is greener on the other side. And all you actually had to do was to water the grass on your side. Not trying to make it sound simplistic. I mean, there are various reasons for migrating, but just that chilled way of thinking about what is it I'm going to do? Can I do that here with a little more effort, or sort of figuring out what's available to me? Because just as we talk about people living for opportunities, I dare say there are thousands who left and are stuck, not the way they thought it would be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari, and thank you everyone for your patience and for sharing your insights. And I think we are really coming out of this conversation, every one of us, with a good understanding of what is the reality on the ground, what are the challenges, what has been done, what are the progress, and what can we do in our own capacity. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Susan Sindani from Nairobi. Please allow me to take it back to Neurotrust so that they can close out with the 3 headline statistics for the record. Thank you so much, and let's continue engaging on the video through comments. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Susan. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So from our end, we just really want to say thank you so much for joining us and for sticking it out for just a little bit over the time that we had allocated. And I have been informed by Afrobarometer that they will be continuing the conversation on email. So please feel free to reach out with any questions. I don't think there's ever enough time for such conversations. And just from listening in to all the interventions and from your lived experiences, from the work that you've been carrying out. There is still a lot of work to be done on the continent, but the work can only be done if we're here and we put our heads together. And whether you're living in Africa, whether you're living in Europe, in Asia, the mere fact that you're African, my personal ask would be whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're working towards, let's continue to build our continent. Let's continue to make sure that our continent is safe, our spaces are okay, our young people have something to look forward to. We keep being told that Africa is the future and this is where innovations are happening. So if this is truly the case, within the resources that we have, let's work together to find solutions to make sure that whatever your passion is, your sector, that it works, and we are there for each other. I know we're familiar with what Ubuntu means, and that is my parting shot to every young person that is here. And I look forward to continuing the conversations on our socials, emails. I know this is also being streamed on the YouTube page, and this is not the end. We really want to urge you that what you take away from here, please use it in your work, in your conversations, in engaging with your peers, engaging with your colleagues, and let's make migration safe and let's make it a choice that Africa is awesome. It's an awesome place to be in. But at the same time, we can go anywhere in the world. So we will be sharing a report from this. Please keep a lookout. And yeah, I just really want to say thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you have tuned in from. And I look forward to seeing you guys on socials. Asanteni sana. And have yourselves a lovely evening ahead.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, colleagues. Bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.